All right, well, let's get to another stock that we are looking at here, Intel. Shares jumping as it's getting a lot of attention today. The tech company reportedly receiving a multi-billion-dollar investment offer from Apollo Global Management. That's according to reporting from Bloomberg First. Now, the offer from Apollo, which is Yahoo's parent company, comes shortly after the Wall Street Journal's report of Qualcomm approaching Intel about a potential takeover. Here with more on the turnaround plan for Intel and attractive AI investments, we've got Spear Invest founder and CIO Ivana Delevska. Ivana, thank you so much for being here with us. So a lot of news when it comes to Intel. What is top of mind for you?
Well, Intel is a pretty interesting story here. The company has had many years of misexecution and missteps in terms of product innovation. So now we're at a point where the data center cycle is kicking off. We're going to see billions of dollars invested in data centers over the next 10 years. But the question is going to be, will Intel be able to capture any of this growth?
And what's your answer to that?
Well, I think it's going to be pretty tricky. I think it's going to require really heavy lifting and significant turnaround. There are two parts to the Intel story. Part one is the foundry business. This is a very tough business that requires significant capital investment. And part two is their processor side. So this is the one that could be more easily turned around into a value-generating entity. The question is going to be, can they keep up with the innovation of AMD and NVIDIA.
On that question of the fabs, Ivana, it was interesting because we had some analysts on Yahoo Finance today who were saying that to them was the issue with some of these stories, because their argument was Intel already has its hands full with the fabs, and why should you believe, so they argued, Qualcomm could move in and do a better job with these assets?
So on the fab side, I think the idea would be if they can spin off and separate those assets, and then maybe somebody like Qualcomm can take over the processor side. But yeah, the fab side is really the more problematic, side.
Do you like a Qualcomm takeover if, hypothetically we get rid of any antitrust issues?
I think it would be pretty difficult for Qualcomm to turn this around. I think there are better places to focus on for them. If they do have a plan of how they're going to turn it around, I think it could be pretty attractive because the valuation is not expensive. The question, though, here is that once you drop the ball on the technology side, it's very difficult to catch up because everybody is investing pretty aggressively in this space.
Do you think one of the CEO Pat Gelsinger is actually in a position where he needs the cash? Is he desperate or no? Does he feel like, I realize my stock's under pressure, but I've got the right strategy, the right roadmap. I don't need the cash.
Well, they do need the cash, right? The foundry side will, as they get further into it, it will require a lot more capital. So they definitely need the cash, and this is why they cut the dividend as well. So yeah, I think the cash part of the story is pretty important.
Yeah, there's the company fundamentals, right, when you talk about the impact of Gelsinger, but there's also the stock, and we just had a chart up showing just the degree of downward pressure that the stock has experienced. I was talking to an analyst who we love to talk to on the show about whether or not, this is a potential opportunity for investors because it's trading so below book value right now. Even if it were to go bankrupt, investors would potentially make out with a little bit of something. What do you think about that?
So investing at book value is pretty difficult, right? Because basically the point is usually stocks have pretty good support at book value, but not if they're burning cash. So that's going to be the key to figure out. If Intel can somehow turn into a cash flow positive story, then book value becomes a lot more relevant, and then you can maybe make money on this investment.
Ivana, there's, as Maddie was said at the beginning, there's all kinds of headlines. It's Qualcomm, but also some headlines of Apollo, parent company of Yahoo Finance, potentially making some moves. Do you like the idea of private equity moving in to names that you own, or no, you don't like that?
Well, I mean, there is always interest from private equity in the space. I think private equity generally likes cash flow positive ideas or some sort of path to get to pretty significant cash flow generation. That's part of the business model. So I think it's going to be interesting to see if there is a path here. I think for us as an investment, basically there is a lot more attractive opportunities out there, especially after this pullback in the data center space.
Even after Ivana, this stock's been, as Maddie pointed out, it's been so crushed. It's down like 55% this year. Even now, you would say you wouldn't kick the tires on it.
We constantly kick the tires, right? That's not the point.
You study it, but you don't want to commit capital.
Exactly. We would only commit capital if we see a clear path towards value creation.
Can we talk about Constellation real quick? It's a good time to be a Constellation shareholder, which I know that you are. Talk to me about how you're sussing out the run rate for that stock. How long are you anticipating holding?
So we like Constellation Energy on a long-term basis. This is the most attractive portfolio of nuclear assets in the United States. We think nuclear will be part of the solution for this data center energy demand trend cycle. So we believe that energy demand currently from data center is only about 2.5%, and that's going to go to over 10% over the next couple of years. So this is going to be a pretty significant tailwind for the space, which has been pretty dead over the past 20 years, basically. Electricity as demand has been pretty stable. So as we need this incremental electricity for data centers, nuclear is really well positioned to plug the hole from reliability and also cost perspective.
Get you on this, Ivana. I know you, so you don't like Intel, right? You've done your work, but still not willing to move in. What about NVIDIA? Still a fan?
Still a fan of NVIDIA. We really like AMD here as well. So if there is a room for somebody to step in and take market share, we think AMD is better positioned than Intel here. So AMD has also pulled back significantly from its high. So I think it's a pretty attractive entry point.
Yeah, certainly under a little bit of pressure. You can see the stock year today up just a little over 5.5%. Ivana, thank you so much for joining us. Really great insight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivana.
Thanks for having me.